All right, so back-to-back weeks with Bellator. I like it. Yeah, Bellator 286, main event for the Featherweight World Championship. We've got Patricio Pitbull taking on Adam Borics, and the co-main event, AJ McKee makes his debut at 155 pounds, taking on Spike Carlyle. And this is kind of just a typical Bellator USA card. And what I mean by that is that you got a lot of, Bellator's rising prospects on this card, especially American prospects that they want to push. And, it's just a lot of fights that, if we're being honest, there's not much to really talk about or predict because a lot of these fights are one-sided. Like, until you get to the final 3 fights in this card, a lot of these, or final 4 fights, I would say, a lot of these fights are just, okay, you know who Bellator wants to win, and if the other fighter wins, it's going to be by some miracle. So we'll go over all the fights one by one, but I'm just saying that's kind of the direction we're going with this card. So we got Bellator 286 this weekend from Long Beach, California. And folks, if you haven't done yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel, because yesterday we posted our UFC Dern versus Jan fight night predictions as well. So make sure you check that video out. It's the first link down in the description down below. Let's though get into Bellator 286. Okay, so we don't have the exact bout order just yet, but this is one of these fights. So this is what I'm talking about. Lance Gibson versus Dominic Clark. You know who's going to win this fight. It would take a miracle for Dominic Clark to win this fight. Lance Gibson is supposed to win this one. He is undefeated. He is 6-0. This is supposed to be him versus Chris Avila, but Avila had to withdraw. Now, Avila's a guy who's 8-9, and he shouldn't really been in this spot either. So they just give him a different opponent in Dominic Clark, a guy fighting out of Fresno, California. He is 15-12. He lost his last fight on BTC 15 Homecoming. The guy, has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. He should not be in this spot. It does not make sense. It's stupid. This is Bellator. You know who they want to win. Clark is 37 years old. Lance Gibson is undefeated in Bellator so far. They have been kind of cautious in booking him so far. They've, booked him against a lot of guys he's supposed to beat. He's still only 27 years old. He's going to win this fight. Lance Gibson is going to run right through Dominic Clark. No question in my mind, he's going to go in there and he is going to finish him in the first round. Again, there's going to be a lot of these. There's going to be a lot of these coming up, but this is, the first of many. Lance Gibson Jr. is going to absolutely decimate Dominic Clark. It'll probably be a takedown and just immediate ground and pound. Lance Gibson Jr. wins by a first round TKO finish pretty brutally. More Bellator matchmaking here because we've got Weber Almeida taking on Ryan Lilley. Weber Almeida is going to win this fight. He is 6-1 coming into this fight. His only loss being to Johnny Soto. It was a tough fight for him, even though he was a minus 550 favorite going into that one, but they brought back Almeida for that fight against Fabricio Franco. He wins it, just kicks the hell out of Franco's legs in those 3 minutes, and now he's been booked against Ryan Lilley. Of course, for Almeida, he was 3-0 in Bellator before running in again to Soto, and then he beat Franco in his last fight. He's going to be taking on an opponent here in Ryan Lilley, who is 11-8. This guy, he lost his last fight to Albert Morales in UNF 1 in the main event by unanimous decision. Similar to our guy Dominic Clark in the last fight, Lilley has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. So not necessarily ideal out of an opponent for Weber Almeida. Lilley shared the ring with Raufin Stotts back in 2018. He lost in the 3rd round, the main event of LFA 48. He does own a win in Bellator for James Barnes back at Bellator 214. The main event of that card was the first matchup between Ryan Bader and Fedor Emelianenko. We'll see if Fedor and Bader fight again. Maybe not, because apparently Scott Coker wants to book, get this, Fedor Emelianenko versus Anderson Silva. Please do not make that fight. I don't want to see it. Anyways, Ryan Lilley's going to get absolutely decimated by Weber Almeida. Almeida's going to go in there. He will probably beat the hell out of him for, 2.5 minutes before he gets the finish. Weber Almeida wins this one by first round at knockout. Pretty simple. So, absolutely the lock of the night. Sumiko Inaba taking on Nadine Mandiau. Whatever, doesn't matter. Sumiko Inaba's winning this fight. No chance in hell. They are trying to push Sumiko Inaba to the moon, and now, she hasn't fought the best opponents yet. She has not, but her striking looks really good. Her big knockout finish of Whitney Piles in her last fight, that clean left hook that just landed from Sumiko Inaba was really nice. It was in the post limbs for the Hawaii card, but Sumiko Inaba looked great in that fight. Her striking has always been really good, and you can expect more of the same in this fight. She's taken on Nadine here, who's the Belgian fighter, who I believe she is a jiu-jitsu. She is a ground fighter. I'll be honest with you, I don't know too much about her. Oh, actually, her nickname is Too Much. Interesting. But I know she's 2-5. She fought Claire Guthrie, who was most notably on The Ultimate Fighter most recently, and Guthrie beat her by unanimous decision. She had lost 4 straight fights before picking up a win in her last fight just 2 months ago in Peak Fighting 22 against Caddy Strite. a fighter who's now 1-2. So there's that. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see a world where Sumiko Inaba doesn't win this fight. Inaba's going to keep it standing, and she's going to knock Nadine out pretty quickly. I think it's going to be Inaba, similar to her last fight, catching her with something. It's going to be a first-round knockout for Sumiko Inaba. It's going to add to her highlight reel. Who knows when Bellator is going to get her against some actual opponents at 125, but they're kind of building her like they built Valerie Loreda. Hopefully, Inaba doesn't, match up with a Hannah Guy or something and lose. But I think Sumiko Inaba is going to win this fight pretty simply, pretty quickly, pretty easily. Sumiko Inaba wins by first-round knockout. So it is the return of J.J. Wilson coming off his first loss in his last fight to Gadzi Rabadanov, and Rabadanov a good fighter. I mean, loses it by unanimous decision, but that is not a bad loss at all. I mean, since then, Gadzi's gone on to beat Bobby King by unanimous decision. So J.J. Wilson's back, though. He was perfect so far in Bellator up until his last fight. He beat Pedro Carvalho in a really good win for him, winning that fight in the second round by TKO at Bellator 257. And the guy's solid. I mean, he's got really good ground game. He can get it done with the striking as well, but it's the ground game out of J.J. Wilson, which is really going to overwhelm a lot of his opponents. But he's tough. He's really tasked with a tough opponent in this fight in Vladimir Tokov. Tokov's last fight was a win over Daniel Skatizi back at Bellator 275 over there in Ireland on the Musasi Vanderford card. And before that, for Tokov, his only loss so far is to Chris Gonzalez. He lost to Gonzalez by split decision, very close fight. Gonzalez since then's gone on to take on some really tough opponents in Gochi Yamauchi's taken on Usman Nurmagomedov. They've been giving Gonzalez some really tough opponents since that win that he had over Tokov. But again, Tokov has bounced back and he won his last fight over Skatizi. This is a tough fight either way, man, because J.J. Wilson, you know what he's going to bring in. Tokov's a really good guy as well. Not going to, necessarily going to be a guy who's going to go out there and get finishes, but Tokov is always in there. He's got, really good gas tank, and it makes for a really intriguing fight between him and Wilson, especially Wilson coming off his first loss in the Bellator cage. I'm going to take J.J. Wilson ever so slightly, but I would not lay any money down on this fight. I think it's a really interesting fight that could go either way, that could swing either way. For now, I'm going to take J.J. Wilson, but I'm not confident at all in the pick. I'll take Wilson, again, coming off that first loss. He's only 25 years old, looking to rebound. Going to take J.J. Wilson to beat Vladimir Tokov by unanimous decision. We'll see, though. So Bobby Seronio's back. He's going to be taking on Miguel Peimbert in this fight. It's pretty obvious who Bellator wants to win this fight. They want Seronio to win this one. I mean, he's 2-0 so far in the Bellator cage. He's looked very good in his first two fights. Looked good in the fight where he won his pro debut against Hernandez, and then the big knockout finish over Ramirez in his last win. Straight right, put him away in the second round. They want Seronio to win this fight. He'll be taking on the Bellator newcomer here in Miguel Peimbert. Now, he's got that, tag on his Tapology page saying that, one or more of his bouts have been flagged by Tapology for having potential issues with its legitimacy. So that's never good to see. He's got that Azmat Mirazhnikov stuff on his Tapology page. But he's 1-1 so far, coming off a loss in his last fight in Gladiator Challenge, losing to Alberto Garcia. But apparently Gladiator Challenge now has been striked for having either record-padding fights or mismatches. I don't know. I mean, all I know is that Henry Cejudo fought in Gladiator Challenge back when, and they also had a former Fury FC headliner and Anthony Doe fight over there be their champion too. But anyways, Gladiator Challenge, it's an alright promotion in California, I guess, but Miguel is 1-1 in that promotion. He just did lose his last fight to Albert Garcia by unanimous decision. Anyways, you know what this fight's going to be. I mean, Seronio's going to win. He's going to knock him out. It's just a matter of when, really. I mean, Seronio's got heavy hands for being a featherweight, fighting out of Vallejo, California, for being a bantamweight, excuse me. Peimbert is coming down from featherweight, coming down to 135 to take on Seronio. So we're going to see the weight cut out of Miguel in this fight, but I don't think it's really going to do much. I mean, Seronio is going to come in here. He's going to knock him out. It's just a matter of time in this fight. I'm going to take him by second round knockout to get up on out of there and win this fight and win his third in the Bellator cage. So Khalid Murtazaliev looking for a bounce back fight in this fight with Bestaev. Murtazaliev's coming off that loss in his last fight, of course, against Anthony Adams, losing it by unanimous decision. He was a huge favorite going in that one, but Adams picked up the big upset pick. And now since then, of course, Adams was booked against Austin Vanderford. Fight never ended up happening. But for Murtazaliev, before that, he won his Bellator debut against Fabio Aguilar, beating him by unanimous decision. He had that one fight in the UFC where he dominated CB Dalloway, didn't get re-signed to the promotion, had a 3-year layoff, came back to Bellator, and won a fight after that. Of course, before that UFC run, he was fighting in Fight Nights Global, excuse me. He's now 15-3 though. Murtazaliev, really good stand-up game though. He's got really sharp hands, really heavy power in his fists as well. He's going to be taking on Bestaev in this fight, and for him, winning a fight in his last UFC Bellator outing, excuse me, winning by unanimous decision. He had that one shot in the Contender Series where he did lose to Phil Hawes. Hawes knocked him out in the first round, big overhand right, put him down, ended up losing the fight. He had 2 fights in LFA. He went 0-2 there, and that's why it was kind of weird him going into the Contender Series, because he just won. He'd only won in Gladiator Challenge, no wins in LFA. Even though the Alonzo Menifield fight got stopped due to an eye injury, but still was like, It was like when Randy Couture lost to Vitor Belfort for the UFC title. Stuff happens, but he's going to be taking on Murtazaliev in this fight. I think Hellion Murtazaliev is going to win. I got him to win this one by second round knockout. You know the hands, the heavy hands that Murtazaliev will bring. I mean, again, he had the hiccup in his last fight, but I think he should be able to come in here and bounce back. It's been a while since that lost to Anthony Adams. I think he'll come back, and I think he'll be able to beat Bestaev in this fight. So I've got Murtazaliev to go in here, pick up a second round knockout win, and get back in the win column. So, I mean, you know what this fight is, right? It's a fight to get Keone Diggs back in the win column. I mean, he's not losing this fight. He's lost his last 2 fights. Sure, it's not great. Back-to-back losses to Daniel Whiteshill and Bobby King, both of which were split decisions, and both of which those are fights that Keone Diggs was supposed to win. But, I mean, he's not losing this one. He started his Bellator career off 2-0, picking up back-to-back victories by rear naked choke, the first one being in the second round, and the second one being with the second left in the fight against Derek Campos. Diggs is not losing this fight. I mean, I think he's going to be able to get this fight any way he wants it. If he wants it on the ground, I think he'll be able to have it. If he wants it on the feet, I think he'll be able to have it on the feet as well. I would be a little bit concerned, though, because Ricardo's ground game is pretty solid, and that's why I didn't pick Diggs to win by submission. I think he'll win by knockout, because when we look at what Ricardo's done in the past, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He's got a loss to Christian Aguilera, former UFC fighter. He got knocked down in the second round with an uppercut. Jacob Rosales knocked him out after that. He beat Dominic Clark in Bellator, and then he got knocked out by Mandiau in his last fight with Superman Punch in the first round. He's been knocked out in 3 of his last 4 fights. Who's to say Keone Diggs can't do the same exact thing? I mean, again, Bellator is not stupid. They know what they are doing when they make these fights. They are trying to get Keone Diggs back on the win column, and they're trying to get him on the back. They're trying to get him back with the win with a huge highlight reel knockout. And again, that's maybe not what Keone Diggs has done so far in Bellator, is come out there and get the big knockout. But in a fight like this, it is literally being handed to him. The blueprint on how to beat his opponent has already been put out there. He's just got to follow it, and he's just got to execute it. So Keone Diggs is going to come in here. He's going to win this fight. It's not going to go to decision. He's probably not going to take it on the ground. He's probably just going to keep it on the feet, and he's probably going to knock his opponent out. So I got Keone Diggs to win this one by second round knockout. I don't think it's going to be that tough of a fight for him. I think he gets back in the win column again with that second round KO finish. Interesting one now with Islam Mamedov taking on Nick Browne. And for Mamedov in his last fight, big win over in Eagle FC. Given it was against Zach Zane, he's supposed to beat Zach Zane every single day of the week, and he did exactly what he was asked to do. Go in there, submit him in the first round. Of course, before that for Mamedov, he had that really close fight with Benson Henderson. I can see it either way. I wasn't mad at the decision of Benson Henderson winning. Obviously, Henderson has now gone on to go beat Peter Queally in Ireland in his last fight just last week. But again, I wasn't too upset with the decision with the Henderson fight, but you know how good Mamedov is. You know how good of a ground game he's got. You know how dominant he is once the fight does reach the ground. And really, with the exception of the Benson Henderson loss, the guy's been pretty much perfect so far. I mean, he had the majority draw fight over in the PFL playoffs against Jaguar Paw, not advancing him into the playoffs in 2019. But the guy's good. Mamedov's a really good fighter. It was ever so apparent in his last fight in Eagle FC. I know Zach Zane's not very good, and I know 13 guys have beat Zach Zane in the past, and Zane's going to go fight in Ryzen next month. But, Mamedov's able to implement his his fight style against pretty much everyone he fights. The thing is, though, Nick Browne's got a really good ground game as well. I mean, Nick Browne is solid on the ground, too. You look at his last win, the win over Mandiau is a really good win. He finishes him on the ground in the second round. He submits Bobby Lee in the first round by a heel hook in his first Bellator fight. I mean, the guy's got a victory over now UFC fighter Trey Ogden, and you know how, UFC hypes up Ogden's ground game. Some people think that he beat Jordan Levin on the ground, and Trey Ogden got submitted by Nick Browne in the first round of the main event of LFA at 76, right? And Ogden was the favorite. Nick Browne went in there and he submitted him in the first round. I mean, this is truly a high-level fight that Bellator is presenting to us here. I think it's an undercard fight, right? Mamedov and Browne's an undercard fight, and it's truly a high-level fight they are bringing to us free on the prelims. I mean, it's a tremendous fight style considering Mamedov's ground game is really good, but Browne's is too. So will they cancel each other out? Will we see a striking fight? I don't know, but I don't think either guy's going to be able to get a finish. I don't think Mamedov's going to be able to go in there and just bully Nick Browne like he's done to his other opponents. And you've seen, again, in the Benson Henderson fight, Henderson offered a lot of resistance to Mamedov, maybe giving Browne, a little bit of hope in this fight. But again, I would not count out Nick Browne in this fight at all. I think Mamedov's still going to win, but I think it's a very competitive one. I'm taking Islam Mamedov to win this one by unanimous decision, but I think it's a very close fight. Still, though, going with Islam to pick up the victory. So it is the Bellator debut of the former UFC fighter Max Rohskopf, and of course, Rohskopf is most known for his one UFC fight, whereas the whole fight that he had against Austin Hubbard, where he quit on the stool. He told his corner to end the fight, and he got unfortunately clowned for it after the fact. But Rohskopf since then has won back-to-back fights with Cage Warriors. Looked really good in both those fights. The last one being a co-main event victory over Jordan Bailey by unanimous decision. And before that, for Rohskopf, it was a ground and pound win in the first round, winning by TKO against Jeff Creighton. Here we are, though, for Rohskopf making his Bellator debut against Mike Hamel. And Hamel's a guy, man, who... he started his Bellator career 0-2, losing to Adam Borics and Usman Nurmagomedov, two very tough opponents and two guys who are fighting for world championships next. But for Hamel, he comes back, he beats Bryce Logan, and then he beats Kils Moda after that by split decision. And here we are against Max Rohskopf. I mean, it's a very intriguing fight for Hamel. And if Hamel's going to win this one, he's going to have to keep the fight on the feet. He cannot get on the ground. He cannot go on the ground with Max Rohskopf because Rohskopf's, you know how good of a wrestling game he's got. The jiu-jitsu is pretty solid out of him as well. But if Rohskopf gets on top, he is dangerous. He's got a lot of different submissions. He's got anacondas. He's got a bunch of different submissions. He can arm triangles from the top that he can implement. Rohskopf's really talented on the ground. The guy is a talented fighter on the ground, and I think it's going to be tough for Mike Hamel to deal with the ground game that Rohskopf will be presenting to him in this fight. I think Hamel will have his moments, don't get me wrong, on the feet. I think Hamel will be able to touch up Rohskopf some. But I think, when it's all said and done, I think Rohskopf will win this fight. Obviously, Bellator, I think, wants him to win this fight. He's still very young. He's 28 years old. He's still, just coming into his prime. I think Rohskopf does win this fight. I think he gets it done by decision. We'll see what happens, but I don't think he's going to be able to get a finish. I think Rohskopf, though, is able to probably win all 3 rounds in this fight, just grind out a victory, uses wrestling to his advantage, and I'll go with Max Rohskopf to win this one by unanimous decision. So it is the Bellator debut of Richard Palencia, a guy who I was surprised wasn't fighting on the Contender Series, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, Palencia's a guy who is undefeated. He's 10-0, making his Bellator debut. He's supposed to take on Marcus Breno back in the summer of 2022, but of course, the fight got postponed. Palencia is now going to be taking on CJ Hamilton instead. And again, Palencia is a guy who is 10-0. He is the reigning LFA Bantamweight champion, winning that fight back at LFA 119 by unanimous decision. The guy's really good. Palencia is a all-around, very well-rounded fighter. He's good on the ground. He's solid on the feet as well. Just, again, he's the total package. And he's going to be taking on CJ Hamilton in this fight. And Hamilton's been a guy who's, he's won some, he's lost some. He's been around for a while. He's been around the block. He fought Casey Kenny on the Contender Series. Really hasn't seen too much success since then. He fought Jimmy Flick. He got subbed by an arm triangle. Won a couple fights in Combate. Fought in Bellator twice against Mamedov. Lost by rear naked choke. And then fought Matos in his last fight. He got knocked out in the second round. Now he's booked against Richard Palencia. I mean, it's the spot that CJ Hamilton has kind of just, filled here with Bellator. He's a guy who's going to go in there. He's going to lose fights to up-and-coming prospects. And it sucks, but that's kind of what this is. Richard Palencia is a guy that Bellator wants to push. He's undefeated. He's 10-0. He's 32 years old again, in the prime of his career. This is his time to make a run in Bellator, and it's going to start tonight with the win over CJ Hamilton. He can have it on the feet. He can have it on the ground. I like Richard Palencia all day long. I think he wins this fight. He outlasts CJ Hamilton, and he wins this one by unanimous decision. Very interesting fight. So Juan Archuleta is back after back-to-back losses in back-to-back title fights. He'll now be taken on Enrique Barzola, and Barzola is a guy who, of course, just lost in the Grand Prix to Mamedov. He got submitted in the 4th round, that grueling fight at Bellator 282, but he lost by guillotine choke in the 4th round. And for Enrique Barzola, 2-1 in Bellator, came in, beat Darren Caldwell, finished him in the 3rd round, then beat Nikita Milikov, beat him by unanimous decision in the wild card fight to get a spot in the tournament against Mamedov, of course, where he eventually lost. And for Juan Archuleta, of course, he was involved in the Grand Prix as well. After defending his championship, after winning his championship against Patchy Mix, he went on to defend it for the first time against Sergio Pettis, a fight that he ended up losing by unanimous decision, a fight that Pettis kind of just dominated from pillar to post. And then Archuleta gets put into a replacement role because it's supposed to be Raufeon Stotts versus Sergio Pettis for the World Championship. Pettis had to pull out, so instead it's an interim championship bout between Archuleta and Raufeon Stotts. And it's a fight that, don't forget, Juan Archuleta is fighting a lot of success into that 3rd round. Archuleta is fighting well. I mean, the first 2 rounds, you can make the case, and I think I would, that Archuleta won those first 2 rounds, but in the 3rd, Raufeon Stotts catches him with the head kick and puts the lights out. And new world champion, Raufeon Stotts. And boy, am I excited for one of the biggest Bellator fights that they're going to put on. Danny Sabatello versus Raufeon Stotts. I mean, that fight should be promoted that should be the biggest Bellator fight in history. Like, seriously, they should promote the hell out of that fight. Will they? They won't, but they should promote Danny Sabatello and Raufeon Stotts like it is a serious super fight in that Grand Prix, because it is. It's for a world championship. It's a big-time fight between 2 guys who have just, they've been on a wrecking course so far in the Bellator cage. Anyways, we'll get to that fight when we get to it in December, but boy, am I excited for some Raufeon Stotts versus Danny Sabatello. Anyways, for Archuleta, though, he's winning the fight against Stotts. He's looking good on the feet. His hands are crisp. He's looking good since that loss to Sergio Pettis, and now he's going to be taking on Enrique Barzola. And theoretically, it's a fight that Archuleta should win. I mean, Barzola is solid, but like, I think on the feet, Archuleta is better. I think Barzola might have some opportunities in the ground, but like Juan Archuleta's defensive wrestling is pretty good too. Like, I don't think that, I think it's a tough stylistic fight for Enrique Barzola. I think Juan Archuleta is better on the feet. I think his, defensive wrestling is good enough to the point where he can keep the fight standing as well. I think Juan Archuleta is able to bounce back after 2 straight losses in back-to-back title fights. I think Archuleta gets back on his winning ways with a decision victory over Enrique Barzola. So next up, we've got Aaron Pico taking on Jeremy Kennedy, and Pico's been really good recently, man. I mean, when he got knocked out by Carlyle and Borics in back-to-back fights, I didn't know if Pico was going to be able to come back from that, but he really hasn't, given he's been booked against some opponents that he's been really favored in, but he's won all of them and he's passed them with flying colors. The Justin Gonzalez win looks good. The Edwards win was a good win for him, finally finishing the fight in the 3rd round, but this is truly now his next biggest test. Jeremy Kennedy's a real guy. Kennedy's a guy who's been in the UFC before. He was 3-1 over there. His only loss being to the current champion, Alexander Volkanovski. This is a guy who's been deep in the PFL season. He had a fight where he lost to Daniel Pineda deep in the PFL year. He's been doing well in Bellator so far. He's 2-1, picking up a victory against Emmanuel Sanchez in his last fight by unanimous decision. He had a close fight. Well, not really close fight, but he lost to Adam Borics by unanimous decision. Jeremy Kennedy's a good fighter. He's a good fighter that is going to be a real test to see if Aaron Pico can get back on that level and at least the level of hype that he once had. Because Aaron Pico had that hype. Can he get back to it again? We will see. Because Jeremy Kennedy's going to throw back at him. Like, Kennedy is going to throw, and he's going to throw big shots back at Aaron Pico. Can Pico avoid them, bite down the mouthpiece, and knock out Jeremy Kennedy? I think he's going to be able to. I mean, honestly, I think so. Aaron Pico is finally coming into his own as a fighter, and he was pushed way too young and way too early on in his career. They set all these high expectations for him when the guy was like, 22? He's now 26. He's looking good. I think he's going to come in here. I think he's going to keep that wave of success going, and I think he's going to come in there and knock out Jeremy Kennedy in the 2nd round. I think he's going to catch him with something huge. It's going to be a big highlight reel knockout for Aaron Pico, finally establishing himself once more as an elite 145-pounder in the Bellator division. Got Pico to win by 2nd round KO. So the Mercenary is up at 155 pounds. The co-main event, AJ McKee taking on Spike Carlyle. Now, AJ McKee lost his last fight after the highest of highs, beating Patricio Pitbull in Los Angeles. He, knocked him down, got him with the guillotine choke, submitted him, won in the 1st round. They book him again against Pitbull. He loses the fight by unanimous decision. I think everyone thought that Patricio Pitbull, when that fight was over, won the fight. I think a lot of people picked AJ McKee to win. I picked McKee to win both fights. He didn't, obviously, but by the time that final horn rang at the end of the 5th round, I thought Patricio Pitbull won the fight. AJ McKee thought he won the fight. AJ McKee's corner thought he won the fight. You go rewatch that fight. Patricio Pitbull won the fight. Anyways, AJ McKee's done killing himself trying to get down to 145 pounds. He's up at 155. The plan that I think he had originally after he beat Patricio Pitbull the 1st time, I thought he was going to go up and fight him at 55 for Pitbull's other championship. Obviously now 155-pound championship is held by Patricky Pitbull, and he's going to go fight Usman Nurmagomedov in a month, but that's besides the point. AJ McKee, actually, no, it's not besides the point, because if the AJ McKee beats Spike Carlyle, that is likely his next fight. We'll see where Tofik Musayev fits in all of this, but AJ McKee taking on Spike Carlyle in this fight, you know how good of a ground game AJ McKee has got. His hands are really great as well. I mean, AJ McKee, I say this every time he fights, he is one of the most well-balanced fighters you are going to find out there. Like, seriously, this guy's ground game matches up really well with his stand-up game. He's so good everywhere. His ground game is so tricky, but he's got power with his hands, and he's really fast with his combos as well. He's going to be taking on Spike Carlyle, though, which, no disrespect to Spike Carlyle, but AJ McKee should win this fight. It's cool that Carlyle has, won 5 straight fights after being cut from the UFC, but there's a reason, again, this guy went 1-2 in the UFC. He beat Alon Cruz, lost to Billy Q, lost to Bill Algeo, who are decent guys, but who has he, beat since losing, in the UFC? Again, he had a close fight with Dan Moret, which he came back, and it was a fun fight, but he came back and won in the 3rd round. He won his last fight in Ryzen in the 2nd round, where he subbed a guy by guillotine choke. But there's a difference in fighting Dan Moret and fighting AJ McKee. McKee's a whole nother animal. I think he's going to tire out Spike Carlyle on the feet. I think he's going to do damage to Spike Carlyle on the feet. And eventually in the 2nd round, I think McKee's going to knock him down. I think he's going to catch him in a submission. I got AJ McKee to win his first fight at 155 pounds. He's going to beat Spike Carlyle basically everywhere. And as long as he doesn't get caught with a huge power shot, AJ McKee is going to win this fight. I've got McKee to win this one by 2nd round submission. So Patricio Pitbull is back in yet another title defense. And now he'll be taking on Adam Borics. Borics going to get his first shot at the championship championship. He's 18-1, the only loss being to Darren Caldwell, where he got submitted back in 2020 in the first round by rear naked choke. But since that loss, Borics has come in. He's beat Mike Hamel, beat Eric Sanchez, beat Jeremy Kennedy, and most recently beating Mads Burnell in a fight where I did not think he was going to win. He beat Mads Burnell by unanimous decision. Now, Mads Burnell since then lost to Pedro Carvalho. I don't know how that happened, but it's all right. But I still need to go watch that fight. I mean, I was busy during the day, but I still need to go watch Burnell and Carvalho. Anyway, I just saw Carvalho won, but Borics beat Mads Burnell's last fight. I did not think that was going to happen, but Borics looked really good in that one. The stand-up game keeps on evolving. Adam Borics' stand-up game, mixed in with his ground game, keeps on getting better and better, and now he's matched up with Patricio Pitbull. My thing with this fight, though, is I think there's levels to this game. I think Patricio Pitbull is just better than Adam Borics. I just think that's how that goes. I think Pitbull's better than him. I think Pitbull's got more power on the feet. I think if this fight hits the ground, Pitbull's better down there. Again, I think that Pitbull and McKee we're just on a different level at 145 than the rest of these guys. And there might be guys in Bellator's 145 pound division that can beat Patricio Pitbull in the future, but it's just not right now. I know Pitbull's 35. I know he's getting up there in age, but with the exception of that one loss, the fight that only lasted 2 minutes to AJ McKee, he's still been phenomenal. I mean, you go back to the knockout win over Michael Chandler. You go back to the domination of Juan Archuleta. You go to the big win over Pedro Carvalho, where he submitted Emmanuel Sanchez in the first round by guillotine choke. And I wouldn't even call the Carvalho win a big win. I mean, Pitbull said it himself when they're picking the draw for the Grand Prix. I want number one loser fight. I want Pedro Carvalho. It says something along the lines of that. And he picked Carvalho and he beat him, right? He ran to AJ McKee in the Grand Prix finals. He lost, got his rematch, made the adjustments, beat AJ McKee everywhere where it mattered, and Patricio Pitbull is now the world champion again. He's going to do the same thing, and he's going to beat Adam Borics. I think this will be five rounds of honestly domination. I think Borics will have his moments, but when I factor everything into this fight, Pitbull's better on the feet. He's better on the ground. Where does Borics catch him? I mean, Borics is literally, he's going to have to catch him with a big shot and catch him off guard, similar to what AJ McKee did in their first encounter between Pitbull and McKee. I don't think Borics is able to do that. I don't think he's able to do that. You got to get really lucky to beat Patricio Pitbull. I know he's 35 years old. I know he's getting up there in age, and everyone said he was washed up after he lost to McKee the first time around. Well, the second fight showed how good Patricio Pitbull still is, and he's going to show it again when he beats Adam Borics this Saturday night in Long Beach, California. Again, if it hits the ground, I like Pitbull down there. On the feet, I like Pitbull too. I mean, Borics might be slightly faster than him on the feet, but power-wise, it's Patricio Pitbull all day long. I think damage-wise, Pitbull's going to do a lot more to Borics than what Borics is going to offer on the other side. So again, I think Borics is a talented guy. He's still young. He's 29 years old. He's only lost once to Darren Caldwell. But I just think Pitbull's better. If Pitbull does find himself in some danger on the feet, he can go down to the ground. He can get the fight done that way as well. I like Patricio Pitbull everywhere this fight goes. Pitbull's going to retain the championship, and he's going to beat Adam Borics. He's going to do it by unanimous decision. We'll see what's next, but I think Pitbull, again, remains champ. So, folks, thank y'all for watching our Bellator 286 predictions here on the channel. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more Bellator here on the channel. We will be back for the next Bellator card, which is Bellator 287, coming at you from Italy in 4 weeks' time, so be on the lookout for that. And, of course, we got UFC going up every single week in the PFL Championship card, and that's happening, I think, I think it's more like a month or so, but we'll be back for PFL as well. But yeah, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.